since we've got the lanterns going, and we're making some heat in the room anyways, let's close the door to make sure I don't have any wind currents coming in here, although it seems to be a fairly calm day. But this one doesn't seem to like a whole lot of airflow around it. Now this is the first actual firing of the Tilley. When I went looking for kerosene for the Tilley, I ended up going to the Myers store and buying what it actually calls for, which is ultra pure paraffin lamp oil. I didn't think that I would be able to find ultra pure paraffin lamp oil anywhere, but it seems that it's a thing that people use for desk lanterns. And the pour spout is not the best because it's dripping down near my chute. So I'm going to have to do some cleanup before I fire this thing off. That's a gallon jug and I've put about 2 quarts in there. I would think that would be enough to give it fuel to fire off. Paraffin oil has a much higher flash point than gasoline. Gasoline will vaporize and flash off at 46 degrees below zero. So that's why you can have a gasoline engine start when it's really, really cold, and diesels, which run on a form of kerosene, really don't want to fire off until they've warmed up a bit. Glow plugs. That's why the Tilley has a preheater, because you need to have the fuel vaporized before it will ignite and burn well. Now this pump that I'm using does not work well. It puts as much fuel on my hand as it does into the lamp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not use it. I'm going to do it a slow, awkward way, which is not considered to be the normal thing to do, but I don't want to spend all day trying to do this, so I'm going to improvise. Now I have to go get a rag. I gotta wipe up some spilled alcohol. I'll be right back. Now, it's been a long time since the Tilley had any kerosene or paraffin oil in it, so it might not want to fire right off. I expect to have problems with it. Looks like maybe I don't have as much in the tank as I thought I did. Either that or else this little gauge down here is no longer working. That's a good possibility. Looks like the needle might be stuck. Okay, I'm going to turn this around and put a few pumps into the tank. I don't really know how many pumps that was because I wasn't counting. I'll be darned. Camera stopped. Well, I've got flames coming out of the manifold up here. You can see a nice blue flame coming out. The screen is starting to glow red. Now, it might not have been quite hot enough. The little valve is all the way open. The flames are starting to come out further down they're starting to come out the screen down below. That means everything's heating up a little bit more, getting a bit more pressure. Well, there's definitely flames coming out. It seems to be burning quite well. Putting out quite a bit of heat too. Starting to roar a bit. I don't know if you can hear it over the Colemans. I think it's finally getting hot enough to actually function right. Yeah, that's putting out quite a bit of heat. A little kerosene coming out the bottom though. That is not a good thing. It's not running down the generator, it's leaking out that bottom seat. I bet I gotta put a new gasket on that. Because it's not leaking out of the tank fitting and it's not leaking out of the valve. It's leaking out of the nut right there on the bottom. Leaking out around this. Okay though, I got a fire. And there's a little paper gasket that goes underneath the generator that I can replace. And I think I have a successful fire. We'll do the replacement work on that after everything cools off. And I'm quite happy with the result. Considering that this was marked as does not work when I bought it for $8. That's pretty darn good. The preheater worked excellently. While I'm working on it, I'm going to check on this little gauge down here, see what's wrong with that. Maybe I can fix that. It'd be nice to know how much fuel there is in the tank. I can consider today a reasonable success. Release the pressure on the tank. When you're working with things like this, like the Tilley or the Coleman lanterns, please be careful. Leaking fuel can cause all kinds of problems. So I always do this kind of work away from the house. I'm 100 feet away from the house in a barn that is fairly fire resistant. It'll be better as I go along making it more into a blacksmith shop. But the big thing I got going is, if there is something that happens, I can just walk out the door and get away from it. If the building burns, the building burns, and I'm going to be really unhappy about that. But I'm going to be safe, and that's what I want to have you guys be. Be careful. Today's testing has been pretty successful. So far today I've got 2 Coleman lanterns to fire off, and the Tilley has lit. The preheater worked just fine. The only thing I've got going on it is I have a leaking gasket on the generator and I have a fuel gauge that's not working. So I'm going to work on the fuel gauge and I'm going to work on the generator gasket, and we'll get those going hopefully sooner than 3 weeks like it took for the Coleman lanterns. But you got to remember, guys, I'm working on all kinds of things all the time, and sometimes jobs just have to wait for something else to get done. If you have any suggestions for a new video, or questions about today's video or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments below. You know I read them all. And remember, I'm working towards the things that you're asking about, but I don't always get a chance to do everything exactly the way I want to. Thanks for watching. Have a safe day.